the LaxFactor podcast.
What is up, lacrosse fans? You're watching episode 125. So we are approaching that 150 mark here. We only got 25 more of these bad boys to go. With the slow news cycle, the way it's been going, I'm not sure how quick we'll get there. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And this episode, as always, is it's brought to you by our swag. So if you want to support the podcast, Maryland flag shorts, you can go to LaxFactor.com. We have all sorts of swag. We've got branded t-shirts, and then we have rando, just cool lacrosse t-shirts, all designed in-house, printed by Printful and fulfilled by Printful. So go to LaxFactor.com to support us that way. And let's get into it. We have US Lacrosse, I think, is where I yanked these from. They came out with their D1 preseason positional players of the year, and it almost perfectly matches what I would have done. So I'm going to put out my own video that'll go into a little bit greater detail. Maybe I won't after I'm done doing this, because this is, like I said, it's a kind of act as my own list as well, because there's only one positional, the midfielder of the year. I may have changed that up a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. So anyway, let's get right into it here. And then we'll have a segment later, actually, called Story Time with Pro Lacrosse Players, where I listen to a bunch of lacrosse podcasts, and admittedly, I'm not a big fan of lacrosse podcasts. And the only reason being, even though I'm a lacrosse podcaster, I like to listen to dudes rambling, and I don't do that here. I'm kind of more of a news podcast kind of deal, but I love listening to just random guys shooting the shit. And my new favorite podcast is the Post Game with Nick Ossello and Evan Molloy. So they had Ryder Garnsey on this week. So there was a really funny segment that we're going to start doing this as I listen. It's going to end up stroking these guys off, and these guys are, to quote Evan Molloy, and these guys are going to end up getting the bulk of these, I presume, because their podcast is now my new favorite. But I suspect it'll be a mix between the Crease Dive, the Barstool guys telling stories with dudes, and these guys will end up probably eating most of these segments. So we'll do that a little bit later as well. So to get into the D1 positional players of the year, we got to talk about Attackman of the year first. Preseason Attackman of the year, both mine and probably everybody else's, is going to be Michael Sowers, formerly of Princeton fame, now of Duke fame. I talk about Sowers all the time, but how can you not? He's the best player in the world right now. The best college lacrosse player, period, right now. And once he moves on and plays pro, if that's what he decides to do, he's going to be one of the best players in the world, hands down. So Sowers, career points, it's a no-brainer making him the Attackman of the year. He was on pace to break all sorts of records in the shortened 2020 season. Over just 5 games played in 2020, Sowers goes for 16 goals, 31 helpers, 47 points over 5 games. That is absolutely insane. 31% shooting percentage, 60% on goal, a game winner, played huge against in Princeton's upset of UVA. Had Princeton coming back from like a middling, in 2019, Princeton was like a mid-level Ivy League team, and he had them, people talking about them after those first 5 games as a potential national title contender. So huge for Sowers. 14 GBs, 10 turnovers, but he touches the ball all the time. You're going to have that. So Michael Sowers was an absolute no-brainer for this position here. If I look up his bio and just rip through his bio here, in his time at Princeton, which spanned 3 years and 5 games, their all-time leading scorer with 302 career points, holds Princeton's record for career assists, is tied for 5th in career goals, ranks 1, 2, 3 on Princeton's single-season scoring list, which is crazy. And I mean, Princeton, man, is a powerhouse from back in the day. So I mean, the roll call of guys who he had to frog jump to get up there, they're all legends. 4th all-time in career assists per game, ranked 16th all-time in Division I. I could go on and on. Everybody knows Mike Sowers, best player in college lacrosse. Obviously, that makes him the best attackman in college lacrosse, so it makes sense he would be the Attackman of the year. Now, the Midfielder of the year. Now, this is the only one that I think I'd probably, at first I was like, man, that's a bad call. This dude probably should have been maybe the Specialist of the year. And maybe flip-flopped with another guy, but I do see the point here. And they picked Ryan Terefenko of Ohio State fame. And in hindsight, I think now that I've considered it, and actually I did a lot of that considering while I was sitting here, getting ready to go. I already hit record and I just sat here in silence for a little while trying to figure out what I was going to say. Terefenko, I think, would be my midfielder of the year, partly because he is a super senior coming back as a graduate senior after the COVID shortened year. He's a 2-time team captain, played 52 career games. He's their active career leader in ground balls. The dude is a ball hawk, a ridiculous two-way midfielder in terms of his capabilities. Primarily, though, put him on the opposing team's best mid, and he's going to beat people up. 3-time USILA All-American at short stick defensive midfield, earning honorable mention in 2017, third-team accolades in 2018, and second-team honors in 2019. 34 career points, so he gets up the field and mixes it up as well. A 2-time Tewarton Award nominee, first-team All-Big Ten in 2018 and 2019, and as we talked about it, being put on either like the All-ACC or the All-Big Ten team, being put on your conference's team is a big deal because they're typically smaller teams and every conference is loaded with talent. So for him to be a 2-time Big Ten, and he would have been a 3-time Big Ten after the 2020 season. He's a sports industry major. Nobody cares. All we care about right now is lacrosse. And he's a 3-time OSU Scholar athlete. So he's got a little bit, he's better than average gray matter rocking around up here in his head. In his senior season, in that COVID shortened season, which is going to go down with an asterisk for all these guys. First team preseason All-American, obviously. Tewarton Award nominee, obviously. Big Ten preseason players to watch list. Could have ended up being the Big Ten player of the year if, depending on how things played out. Probably not, though. I would have given that to probably Bernhardt or Grant Ament. We're going to take the Big Ten player of the year, depending on how things shook out. Picked up 7 ground balls in what was the final game of their season in a 13-11 win over number 14 Notre Dame, and then helped Ohio State to an 11th ranking nationally in clearing percentage, which is a weird thing. But the dudes, you just give the guy the ball, let him book it upfield, put him on one of the other opposing team's best midfielders. He's going to beat them up and just keep pace with them, pester them all game long. Terefenko, a huge part of what Ohio State does, and why I believe I also had Ohio State at one point as one of my top returning defensive teams for the 2021 season. We get into Defender of the Year, preseason Defender of the Year, and this would have been my pick. I think this is unanimous across the board. You give it to JT Giles-Harris. Now, there's a lot of really good defenders, so there could have been some defenders or could be some defenders in 2021 that could end up stealing this away from him. But the fact that he's a super senior, and that's why I think this list is going to be full of super seniors, because with the COVID shortened season and how all that stuff plays out, you give it to the vet. You give it to the vet that has the best overall track record. That does not necessarily mean that vet's going to be the guy who ends up winning that award in the end. So JT Giles-Harris, super senior graduate student at Duke, started all 8 games on close D in that shortened season. Inside lacrosse first team All-American, led the team with 13 caused turnovers, which is telling because teams avoid him. He's not the best on-ball defender in the country, although he is more than capable. But what he does really well is anchors the defense, controls the defense, talks the defense through what's going on. He plays well off ball. Sometimes the argument might even be he's a little bit over aggressive when he's playing off ball, which could sometimes put the other guys in a bad spot. But this guy I talked about too, he is going to be your prototypical PLL defender. This guy is going to make it in the pro level. He'll make it at the pro level. He's going to be huge at the pro level. I would expect him to be a pretty high up there draft pick as well. He registered at least 1 ground ball in all 8 games. It's not a big deal for a guy like him. Had a caused turnover in 7 of the 8 games. That is a big deal considering how often people avoid him. Scored his first career goal in a win over Furman. Now, it is a myth that he is a crazy up and down the field score goals kind of guy. He isn't. He will get up and mix it up in transition, but he's not the kind of guy to put his head down, take the ball to the rack. He's typically going to get the ball up and put it in a more capable player's hands, which is something I like to see out of defenders. I do like seeing defenders rip rope, come up and fire off 115 mile an hour shot, because we all know that you take a fastest shot contest and you put a bunch of defenders in it, because they're typically with that torque, they're going to win a lot of those. The moment they're doing that, they're taking that shot in a fastest shot competition, that shot, whatever the fastest shot is in terms of the fastest shot competition, put 5 miles an hour on that and start clocking dudes that are letting it rip in games. And I bet you those are typically the fastest shots. So I do like seeing defenders rip shit, but he's not that guy. He is just going to take the ball away from someone, pick a ground ball up, double team someone and cause some kind of turnover, let someone else pick it up. But he's going to get the ball up the field and out of his hands as soon as possible, even though I bet you he could probably score with the best of them. He had 6 ground balls and it caused 4 turnovers in an overtime victory against Richmond, because in February, Duke struggles against everybody. That's just the way it goes. Forced 2 turnovers and had 3 ground balls in a 15-13 win at Denver in February. And also, gray matter between the brains, ACC academic honor roll. So no brainer. JT Giles-Harris, I think he was my preseason defender of the year last year as well, but I don't remember, honestly. It was a really long time ago. Preseason goalie of the year, my boy Drake Porter gets that. I think the dude's deserving, especially because of what he has meant to the Syracuse defense. And I think that missing Mellon last year and seeing how well that Syracuse defense played, even without their All-American defender last year, I think Porter had a lot to do with that between the pipes. Led the ACC with a 57.7% save percentage, which put him in the area 12th nationally. Was on the Tewarton Award watch list, started all 5 games on that COVID-shortened season, was a USILA Scholar All-American, rocking that gray matter, guys. That's important if you're going to be a D1 athlete, especially a top-tier D1 athlete. He's played for Team Canada in the US Lacrosse Fall Classic. Just like we keep saying, best goalie Cuse has seen probably overall since we had John Galloway. So it's been everyone who's a Cuse fan has been really pumped about Drake Porter in the cage, and he's got the flow that shows too, man. So that you can't beat that. He's got some of the best flow in the game. We had a little bit of a dispute here last year, and I think Drake. I put Jamie Trimboli's hair ahead of Drake's, so we'll see how that goes in 2021 to see who's rocking the better flow. So that was a no-brainer. I won't say that. I won't say that was a no-brainer. I think of all the picks that they made and all the picks that I would make, I think the most people would chirp about that Drake Porter pick, because there's a bunch of other goalies that you could consider. I think that Drake Porter is necessarily the best goalie in the country. Could be. I think that there'd be an argument to make for a couple other guys. I think, though, that what Drake Porter has is the best situation, and he plays on a really good team, and I think that puts him in that spot where so far he's earned the respect of his teammates. He's earned the respect of opposing players and coaches, and so I think that even if he's not necessarily the best goalie in the country, I think that in terms of this preseason award, given his situation, it makes complete sense, and I totally agree with it, especially because I'm a Cuse homer. Now, this is the one that I thought was weird, because I guess Terefenko gets the midfielder of the year simply because he's on the field a lot more. And and the specialist of the year award, everybody knows who it's going to be, because I haven't said this guy's name yet, but it's T.D. Ierlan. T.D. Ierlan, Yale fame. He will also be a super senior. He was the first overall pick in the 2020 MLL draft by New York, 3-time All-American, 2-time first-team All-American, Tewarton Award finalist, 2-time Conference Player of the Year, transferred to Yale after 2 years at the University of Albany. I mean, dude's just crazy. His NCAA records, so to just go through some of the records that he holds so far. Ground balls in a game, 29 against Georgetown in 2019. That's crazy. Ground balls in an NCAA tournament game, 29 versus Georgetown. That's the same game. Ground balls in a season, 293 in the 2019 season, second with 254 in 2018. Ground balls in a career, 810. Ground balls per game in a season, first and second. He holds both of those records with 15.42 in 2019 and 13.37 in 2018. Face-offs won in an NCAA tournament game, 31 versus Georgetown in 2019. That's crazy. He won 31 face-offs against Georgetown, and he had 29 ground balls in that game. I don't know how many that means he won clean, but it means he won a shitload of those face-offs clean for sure. I think technically the proper word for that would be he won a fuckload of those over the course of that game. Face-offs won in a season, 393 in 2019, and he's also second with 359 in 2018. Face-offs won in a career, 1,159. That's bonkers. Face-off winning percentage in a game, 26 of 26 against Harvard in 2019, and then face-off percentage in a season, 79.1 in 2018 when he was at Albany. Now, I think I had said that it was going to be very hard for him to be able to beat that 79.1 because Ivy League is going to be far tougher competition than the America East Conference is. And for any America East teams that get hurt by that, bite me. It's the truth. It is absolutely the truth, and anyone who's objective would agree with that. So, and then Ierlan, in terms of his pace for the 2020 season, his career faceoff percentage and career ground ball average would also be records after 4 games in 2020. It looks like Yale's going to play. I know there's a bunch of Ivy League teams that aren't going to play. I have heard, I believe Princeton not playing in 2021. I have heard from a birdie that Harvard is not going to play in 2021. So I don't know what the Ivy is going to end up looking like and what the other teams will, but as long as TD gets to take the field with Yale here in 2021, even if it is another shortened season or whatnot, he's sure to jack people up all left and right. So now we got through all of those, and once again, I literally just mirrored I think it was US Lacrosse's list, because that's what I would have picked across the board. I will admit, it took some winning over and for me to do a little bit of reading on Terefenko. Now, do I think, let me go back through the list and say, who do I think will actually win the awards by the end of the 2021 season? Mike Sowers going to be Attackman of the Year. The only reason Mike Sowers might not get Attackman of the Year would be if they decide to do one of those things where they want to spread the awards out. So if Mike Sowers ends up getting Player of the Year, he may not end up getting Attackman of the Year. They may end up giving that to somebody else. It could be like a Mac O'Keefe, or it could be like a Jackson Morrill. Those guys are going to be right up there for consideration if they decide to split it up. But Sowers is definitely the Attacker of the Year in my mind, and he will win that award unless they do something funky because he gets Player of the Year. Midfielder of the Year. I do not think Ryan Terefenko will win Midfielder of the Year. Not because he's not deserving. I just think that we're going to end up seeing, some other midfielder that's more of an offensive midfielder that puts up a boatload of points end up getting that award. I feel like a lot of times, giving this to Terefenko is like, hey, you're coming back for your super senior season. You've had a stellar career. Your position defensive midfielders do not get any respect. They get no respect, as Rodney Dangerfield would say. So I don't know that Terefenko will end up winning that award, even though I think he would be totally deserving, even without playing the games. But I think that of all of these guys, 2 of them have a shot at maybe not winning it, and I think Terefenko's one of them, but I think he'd be deserving if he did. JT Giles-Harris, pretty much I think he'll win that. I think that he's been so solid through his entire career. I expect that he's going to be really solid in 2021. So I think that he probably does walk with that, although there are some dudes who you could make the argument that could kind of hop in there and steal that from him. Chris Fake, one of them. Offhand, I'm forgetting the Towson dude's name offhand, but that dude is filthy, the defender for Towson, so he could also step in and take that away. But I think that JT Giles-Harris is the odds-on favorite, and I think he'll probably win it. Keeper, Drake Porter. I think he's the second one. I think Terefenko, of all of these guys, I think Terefenko is the least likely because they just always shit on defensive players when it comes to these awards. I think Drake Porter is second in that list just because there's going to be some goalie. It could end up being Schulper from Army, who's going to end up having like a freaking 75% save percentage or something ridiculous. So Porter, while I agree he deserves a nod for the preseason goalie of the year, especially being that he's a super senior coming back, I think that there is a chance some other goalie just has an off-the-chain season and ends up stealing that from Porter. And then Ierlan's a no-brainer. Absolute no-brainer. Ierlan is the specialist of the year. I would literally, I'm trying to think of what I would do if he wasn't. If TD Ierlan doesn't win the specialist of the year and he plays in most or all of Yale's games, I will take this sign here and I will break it over my head in a podcast. That's how sure I am of TD Ierlan winning that award. Same thing with Sowers. That's how sure I am that Sowers will win the Player of the Year or Attackman of the Year award. Break that sign behind me over my head in an episode, because that's just how it's going to go. And then my pick, I don't know if they picked I think they did pick their Player of the Year, but my pick's going to be the same as theirs as well. My preseason pick for Player of the Year is 100% going to be Michael Sowers of now Duke fame. I keep using the word no-brainer to the point where I'm going to sound like I don't have a brain anymore, but it is the truth. He is the truth. He will be the Player of the Year. As long as he plays in the games and they get the season off, he'll be the Player of the Year. And you can take that to the bank, quite literally. And then now, because this is just going to be a short episode. Just a lack of news here still, guys. Not a whole lot of excitement going on. One of the things I wanted to talk about is I have two favorite podcasts that when they come out, I listen to them, and I listen to them in their entirety. I used to only have one favorite podcast, and that was the Crease Dive, the Barstool guys doing the Crease Dive. And thank God that Evan Molloy and Nick Ossello came out with their new podcast, because it's exactly what I look for in a podcast. Just guys shooting the shit, guys that actually know what they're talking about, though, and then guys that in these guys' case, they've got far more direct connection to college players, to the pro players, being that Ossello plays pro lacrosse, plays in the PLL. So by far, those are my two favorite podcasts: the Crease Dive, which you can get anywhere they have podcasts, and the Post Game with Ossello and Molloy. But they had Ryder Garnsey on there, so I want to get into my new segment. I'm only going to do this where it's worthy, but this new segment is called Story Time with Pro Lacrosse Players. And in today's segment, we're going to talk about the post-game interview with Ryder Garnsey. And what they ask Ryder is about just any interactions he had with Ossello. Ossello, I believe, was a super senior playing football at Notre Dame for his graduate year at Notre Dame when Garnsey was a freshman. So they asked Garnsey, what kind of interactions did you have with Ossello? Because their paths did not cross all that often. And Garnsey actually tells a story. His first and one of the only interactions he ever had with Ossello was at the lacrosse house, a party, first night on campus. So it was a hilarious little take. It's going to be short, but take a listen.
You were a freshman on campus when I was playing football for Notre Dame after playing lacrosse, right?
Yeah. So here's a funny story about that. Our first night at school, whatever, the freshmen go over, like first night hanging out. I got the lacrosse house with the older guys on the team and stuff. And I knew who you were just because obviously, I watched Notre Dame lacrosse before I got there, but I didn't know you. And so we're in the basement of the lacrosse house, and I'm just like minding my own business with like a couple of my buddies. And we watch you like come down the stairs and walk over to one of our other buddies and like slap his beer out of their hand. You're like, go get me another one. And we're just like, all right, we're fucking avoiding that guy for the rest of the night. What a dickhead.
I don't think that ever happened. You must have been confused me with someone else.
Does not sound like you.
We didn't interact like much at all, did we? I mean, I don't
even know if we met that night. I was pretty sure I was not going to go anywhere near you.
And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. These are the types of stories I like hearing in podcasts. And another thing they did, and I can't remember if Garnsey was the only one that they asked this question to, or if they also asked Blaze Reardon the episode before, but they asked him about, tell a story about getting arrested while you were on campus. And Garnsey I don't know that if he officially got arrested or just got in trouble, but that was a pretty funny story also. So look that up, the post-game podcast with hosts Nick Ossello and Evan Molloy. Great podcast, my new favorite here at this moment. Another thing I wanted to talk about, December 21st, this is old news, PLL merger crap, but who was it? It was Kyle Devitt put out a article on Inside Lacrosse that talks about 10 guys that should jump from the MLL to just being big names in the PLL. So I just kind of wanted to rattle through that. I already talked about some of these guys. Dan Buccaro, attack out of the Denver Outlaws, just one of the most explosive players in the MLL. Didn't put up like crazy level points or anything like that in terms of like it wasn't like the leading scorer. I think he was somewhere in the area 7th or 8th overall, if I remember correctly. But Buccaro is fully expected to have a big. He's going to be one of those guys taken early in that expansion draft. Another one, Zach Goodrich, and this is where short stick D mids, as Rodney Dangerfield would say, they never get any respect, but he's getting respect here. Zach Goodrich, short stick D midi, Boston Cannons. And one of the quotes here that Devitt said that I thought it was telling just in terms of how much respect this guy's garnered. How good is Zach Goodrich? Zach Goodrich is so good that I can count on one hand how many times I can recall a shorty even deigning to dodge on him in Annapolis. So how often do midfielders avoid trying to dodge on a short stick D midfielder? So that, the fact that people are trying to avoid him, despite the fact he doesn't have one of those 6-foot long poles beating the hell out of people, that says a lot about how much respect he is getting. Andrew Q. Andrew Q, I didn't know who the hell this dude was until they started playing their bubble tournament in the MLL, and the dude could shoot. I know that, and I talked about this before because he was one of the guys I had talked about, but there was that period where he hadn't missed for a little while. And I can't remember, let's see here. At one point, he was perfect from the field and finished the season with a shooting percentage that looked more like a free throw stat than a shooting stat. And he didn't put the stat in there, but I want to say at one point he was like 10 for 10 or 11 for 11 over the course of like a 3-game span or something ridiculous like that. So Q, he's been huge and just kind of popped off out of nowhere, at least in my eye. You know, I'm not a... I know all the big cats that played big time D1 lacrosse, and especially if you played in one of the big conferences, just because they're right in my face all the time. Q wasn't even on my radar, so I love it when you see guys like him pop off from smaller schools and do really well. And then the last one that Devitt talked about was the GOAT, the second, in my opinion, the second greatest player to ever play the college game, the game of college lacrosse. And I think overall, to me, Lyle Thompson is the GOAT overall. Lyle Thompson, Chesapeake Bayhawks, he's going to be the man. I think he has to be, I'd assume, the first guy taken. If he's not the first guy taken, it will only be because for that team scenario, they really just don't need an absolute dominant goal scoring, ball carrying, crazy feeding, nasty beast that Lyle Thompson is. I've been watching every freaking workout video that he puts up with his kettlebells on Instagram. The dude's getting ready. So I'm excited to see Lyle Thompson make that jump. That's going to be a big deal. So that's it for today. Slow news day. Cannot fucking wait to get to the point where we have actual lacrosse to talk about again, but we're getting close here. Teams are going to start practice here at some point in January, I presume. I think the Ivy gets a late start if the pansies that administer, the administrators at the Ivy even get their shit together and let them go. I know they get the late start, but I presume teams will start mid-January, end of January, and I suspect we'll start seeing games getting played. Who knows what the hell? I've kind of held off on talking about the schedule so far because there's a lot of people speculating that some teams are only going to play who's in their conference. I know the Big 10 people were worried they may just play a 10-game or 8-game conference schedule where everybody plays everybody twice. I know the ACC is working that in where everyone's going to play each other once and then a couple of teams are going to play each other twice. But I know they're going to be playing some non-conference games. Who knows? One of the things they talked about in the post game that I thought would have been really interesting was maybe they ditch conference play for the for this shortened the second vid season, with the idea being that Baltimore, New York, the regions, the New England region, southern regions could maybe get games in against teams that are close to them, but I think that would be a nightmare. I think you're going to end up seeing them try to keep the vid within the conference primarily and then just play a couple of local teams where you don't have to deal with the crazy travel. So I've just been holding off on talking about the schedules until we really know what's happening because we don't know how many of the Ivy League teams are going to end up playing. Like I said, I've heard rumors that Harvard is going to opt out and that entire team is not going to play. I believe Princeton's already kind of announced that guys and girls aren't going to play. So we'll see how that pans out. But once these schedules are truly finalized and guys start showing up to practice, that's when I'll start going through the conference schedules and we'll start looking at what's going to happen. But right now, a lot of crap is up in the air. We have the Syracuse crap that's up in the air. Like I said, I know what's going down, and when there is actual stuff to report, I will report it, but I will not be first. We'll leave the news breaking to the Inside Lacrosse guys and some of the other guys on Twitter that do it. I know the story. I'm going to avoid that story, and I'm not going to say shit because, a bunch of people tell me stuff, and I don't want to be the guy that breaks that confidence, even if they don't care. I just don't want to be that guy that runs around and talks shit, especially because we're dealing with kids here. I think that's weak. These aren't kids. I mean, these are young men, and they can handle it, but I'm not going to be the dickhead to pop off at the mouth and tell people what happened. So as soon as somebody else pops off at the mouth and all you guys know what happened, I'll go into what I've heard and we'll figure out what the hell's going to happen. But right now I'm just hoping nothing happens. I'm hoping Stephen Rafis doesn't transfer. I'm hoping that all those guys that Inside Lacrosse reported may have entered the transfer portal that didn't. I'm hoping none of those guys transfer, and it all hinges on something that'll be decided here shortly. And I think within this week, I think by the end of this week, we will probably know what's going to happen in Cuse land with that whole scenario. So That is it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. As always, go to LaxFactor.com and you can get yourself swag, Maryland flag shorts, all that crap. And like, subscribe. If you listen to the audio version, anchor.fm/LaxFactor or anywhere where you get podcasts. And then, as always, be sure to share with your homeboys and all that crap. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will be back for Thursday's regularly scheduled show. It's weird. I'm putting this out on Sunday, so it'll probably tank and only get like 300-400 views on YouTube and, maybe 800 to 1,000 across all platforms. But I'm going to put it out today because I didn't get it out on Thursday because the holiday, it was holidays and stuff. We had stuff to do. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Hoost is out.